Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. On today's program, host Casey Hinches makes garden planters out of pumpkins for fun fall decorations. We look at a new grass labyrinth at the Botanic Garden at OSU. Assistant Extension Specialist Jen Olson and Professor Mike Schnelly have an update on identification and removal of roses with Rose Rosette disease and some research into resistant varieties. And Casey has some great alternatives to roses in the landscape. Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance is provided by TLC, Oklahoma's leading garden center, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, Tulsa's source for great gardens, southwoodgardencenter.com. and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
You probably have noticed that the air is getting crisper and the day lengths are getting shorter. And that means one thing: fall is here. And like so many others, this is one of my favorite seasons for two reasons, really. It's football season, and also it's time to start decorating for the holidays. Now, both of those are family traditions within my family, and today we're going to actually do a decorating project that you can do with your family. What you're going to need is a pumpkin. Any size really will work. You just want to make sure that it sits well on a flat surface. You're also going to need a mum that's appropriately sized for the pumpkin that you get. You're going to need a drill. With really any size drill bit will work, just enough to make a small drain hole in the bottom of your pumpkin. You're going to need a stick or some sort of tool to kind of press that soil down into the pumpkin. And then also your carving knife. Now be careful with this. Obviously with kids we always want to be careful when we're using sharp instruments. And finally we're going to need some potting soil. Now a sack or a trash sack is kind of nice to use to kind of contain the mess when you're doing this, because it will get a little dirty. But what we're going to do is start out just by carving our pumpkin, and we'll do this just like a regular jack-o'-lantern. We want to start by taking off the lid. So once you've got the lid taken off, unlike a jack-o'-lantern, you don't really need to hold on to this. And we've cut our hole probably a little bit smaller than we need to, but it's always better to cut it smaller, and then we can make it larger as we go. Now you want to make sure, and this is where the kids come in handy, because this is the fun part. You want to make sure to get out all that seeds and guts of the pumpkin. The more seeds you get out, the better, because if you don't, you will soon find out by a vine growing in your garden. Before we want to put our plant in, we want to make sure to turn it over, and this is where we'll use our drill, and we want to drill some drainage holes in it. There tends to be a hard core right in the center, and actually the lower part is on the edge, and so we'll just go ahead and drill a couple holes right on around the core. And that will allow for drainage when we put our plant in here. So now that we have our pumpkin cleaned out, we've got all of the seeds out, and if some of those strings are in there, that's fine. We just want to make sure the seeds are cleaned out. And we've got a fairly good opening for our mum here that we're going to try to place in there. An easy way to get these out, because they can break sometimes, is to roll it on the ground on a table so that the mum's actually hanging off. and just hold your hand underneath it and it'll come out really nicely. Now the roots here aren't too root bound, but we're going to just see if it looks like it's still a little bit large. So we're going to have to cut this down, and just like you would plant a new plant, we're going to just trim up some of these roots here. So we're going to add some potting soil into the bottom of this just to bring up the plant a little bit higher in the pumpkin. And you know that as we water these in later on, this will settle. Also, we're obviously trying to put something that has flat sides into something that has round sides inside. So if you can press some of that soil up along the edges, that's good too. All right, now we're gonna push this down in there, and I can tell just by pushing with my fingers that this is firmly planted down onto that potting soil. Now we still need to fill in the sides a little bit. You can see I can easily put my fingers in there. And so we're just gonna go along and kind of press some potting soil down into those sides. Once we're sure that it's firmly packed with soil, the last thing that we've got to do is water our plant in, and we have our mum pot ready to go. Now, the reason why it was so important to not leave any seeds in this is because unlike other holiday decorations, the nice thing about this is there's no storage required. When this one starts to break down, you'll simply take this out into the garden and plant it, pumpkin and all, into the garden, and you'll have your mum there growing for next year. Now, the more you get into this, the more creative you can get with the different plants. We've got some different plants here that we've played with. And like I said, you can do this with any size. This one is great for kids to do their own with a little 4-inch mum. We use some curly rush and some cabbage and also some trailing sedum to make a fun little jack-o'-lantern out of plants. But if you're not wanting to get too creative with the plants, just finding some that makes for great hair is fun if you draw a little face on them. This is a great holiday decorating project that you can do with your family. I encourage you to try it out. We've been talking a lot about labyrinths, and joining us again is Dave Brown, the landscape design coordinator for OSU, and he helped us install a labyrinth here at the Botanic Gardens at OSU. Dave, tell us a little bit about how this labyrinth is different than the one on campus.
There's a few differences. The one on campus is more of an original labyrinth. We wanted to do something very unique for the campus. This one is actually a classical labyrinth. Some call it a Cretan labyrinth. Others refer to it as a 7-circuit labyrinth. So this is one that's actually been found in different parts of the world in our history of the world. So,
you mean you're referencing the pattern? It's a traditional pattern?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And it's actually a pretty sizable labyrinth. I mean, it takes a good 20 minutes to walk this whole thing.
It does, yeah. It doesn't look like it would, but if you start walking it, you'll find out pretty quickly. I think we calculated that it was somewhere a little over a half a mile, I believe.
Wow. And now the materials we use here are obviously very different. In fact, this is kind of more of a low maintenance, lower cost installation project here. We've just used mowed Bermuda grass.
Right, the important part of a labyrinth is the path, not the expense put into it. And this is a labyrinth that shows that you can do this very inexpensively, and that's what we did here to see how it would fit into the space and to see how people would respond to it as well. But that's all we've done here is just mowed the pattern into the path.
And what are the plans, because we're in the fall, so we'll be going into the winter soon. What happens with this? Will we lose our pattern here, or what are the plans for it?
It's possible, but we've talked about a few options. You can flag it out to try to hold the form, but I think probably the better option is if we overseed it. And so we overseed it with a cool season grass. The one we've talked about is maybe a rye. A grain rye would do great, similar to what we do on campus. And that could help us hold the pattern, stay green through the winter, and then when we get back into the growing season and let the Bermuda outcompete it.
And what I love about this is anyone could do this in their backyard, really. I mean, again, there's no materials involved here other than just mowing your Bermuda. There's one feature that you guys actually took into mind, and that was how wide your mower is, right?
Correct, yeah. You definitely don't want to make it very hard to maintain, because if it's hard to maintain, you might get 2 weeks into the summer and decide a labyrinth might not be worth it. But if it's the width of a mower and you can just take a mower through it, even mowing can become quite zen.
And so now when you did this, you spray painted the pattern. And so if a homeowner was to do this at home, they could use spray paint or they could just start mowing, kind of, right? But if the pattern didn't turn out to be the right way, then you just mow it all down and start again.
No harm, no foul.
Excellent.
On this one, the way we did it, there's several ways to go about. We started, we're going to lay this out with GIS, but we changed the location. So what we did here is we just staked the center point, got rope, and then we measured it out that way. And so a guy named Bill Hilson came out and was very kind to do that for us.
Well, it's a beautiful and very simple labyrinth as far as the design goes. Why did they choose to be out here kind of amongst the trees to do it?
Well, this is actually a great place. If you pause for a second, you can hear the insects and you can hear the birds. The fall is coming and we'll be able to hear the rustling leaves. So it's a really good place to kind of take your mind off things and to lower that blood pressure and to be able to focus just a little bit more.
Now, a lot of people might not have the room to do a labyrinth. Is there a place that they could go to find more labyrinths around the state?
There is a website, it's a labyrinth locator, and it'll tell you all of the places that you can find them. There's different universities and there's different hospitals and some churches that all have these that are open to the public.
Well, we now have 3 here in Stillwater, but if you're not in Stillwater, take advantage of that website and go find your local labyrinth.
Rose Rosette is one of the most serious disease of roses that we have in Oklahoma, and it's also common throughout much of the central and eastern United States. Rose Rosette, unfortunately, doesn't kill the rose plants for several years, but almost initially it'll start to disfigure them. You'll see unusual shape to the leaves, so we have a distortion. You'll also see discoloration of the foliage. Now, one of the colors that you'll see in the foliage is that the foliage may take on a red color that doesn't fade with time. And you don't want to confuse this with new growth, because a lot of roses will have a red color to the new growth that later, as those leaves expand and mature, take on the normal green color. With Rose Rosette, the color doesn't usually fade out. You might also notice the leaves are more slender and somewhat rumpled or distorted. Other things to look for would be an overproduction of prickles or thorns, and sometimes you may have a witch's broom effect where you have a reduction in the distance between the nodes, so you have a real bunchy appearance to the foliage. Sometimes these are actually so heavy you'll find them weighted down on the ground. Now, with Rose Rosette, if you need more information, if you're trying to determine if the symptoms are present on your plant, we do have a pictorial guide to Rose Rosette that you can look at. I would say if you're seeing at least 3 of the symptoms on that pictorial guide, there's a good indication that it's Rose Rosette. We also have a fact sheet that has a lot of pictures and shows the symptoms close up, as well as some of the information about management I'm about to discuss. If you believe you might have Rose Rosette or in your landscape, the management is a little bit severe. We used to think that we could just prune off one small section and the plant would be saved, and unfortunately research shows that's just not very effective. So if you have one plant showing symptoms of Rose Rosette and there's other roses in the area, then you need to remove that entire plant, including roots. So dig it up and throw it in the trash. Also pick up as much of the debris as possible. The way that this disease gets into your landscape is there are microscopic arthropods, they're called areophyid mites, that bring in this virus. They blow into your landscape from someone else or from wild areas, and when these areophyid mites feed on the plant, they transmit the virus and you start to see the symptoms. When you are throwing away that infected plant, it is likely that you are also throwing away a lot of the mites carrying the virus so they don't blow onto other people's plants or your own plants. So be sure to throw them in the trash, and then I would suggest if you have other roses in your landscape to follow up with an application of horticultural oil. Now with Rose Rosette, the only known host is rose. So you don't have to worry about other non-roses getting the disease. And in fact, rather than planting a large population of roses, I would encourage you to use a mixed planting where you have roses mixed in with non-hosts, so other plants. That'll help slow the spread and reduce the amount of disease in your landscape. So some of the other considerations for Rose Rosette is that if you have Rose Rosette disease in your landscape, it's likely that it's also in other landscapes or wild areas around you. So it's a good idea to scout around your neighborhood or around wherever you live and see if there might be other reservoir plants that are harboring both the disease and those mites. If you're not sure, you can always consult with your county extension educator and they can let you know if the disease has been found in your area. Another tip for Rose Rosette is that if you are concerned about this disease, if you've seen it in your area, one other thing that will help is in the winter, so late winter, early spring, maybe February timeframe, before the roses start to push out new growth, you want to do your normal pruning, but I would encourage you to remove as much of the foliage and old blooms as possible. We think that's the main place that the mites survive the winter, so if you can remove as much of that leftover foliage and flowers as possible, it's going to reduce the amount of disease. And then you can follow that heavy pruning with an application of dormant oil in late February or March, generally when the temperatures start to reach 50s up to 80s. Now, one of the questions that we sometimes have regarding Rose Rosette is, are there any resistant varieties? And there's a lot of studies in progress to try to figure out if that's the case or not. And so here we have Mike Schnelly from the Department of Horticulture and Landscape Architecture to tell us about a study that's going on right here in Oklahoma.
Thank you, Jen. Like you said, we've had a lot of anecdotal feedback on the roses, but until to date, where we have trials not only here in Stillwater at Oklahoma State University, but also our partners at Kansas State University, in the next 2 to 3 years, will really tell the tale of those 50 to 51 cultivars, which admittedly is a modest start, but we're going to grow from there. We're going to get some ideas, I think, within 2 to 3 years of resistance, if not immunity, to this disease. Then we can hand over those results to rose breeders and actually start making some progress on this dreaded malady.
So, and part of these trials are being done here at Oklahoma and Kansas, but we're also partnered with Texas A&M University, University of Tennessee, and University of Delaware, where they're also doing trials. So it's likely in the next few years we're going to have a number of varieties, cultivars, that are either resistant or tolerant to this disease. Some of them that are already ready for the market, and some of them that are being worked with by breeders.
And when you look at the sheer number of cultivars of roses out in the market, this many universities, it's not overkill. We need that many partners to start making progress on that handful, possibly more of roses that we can actually, again, hand over to breeders. Go from there.
So in the end, I think it's important we still grow roses here in Oklahoma. They are a beautiful part of our landscape, and we don't want to encourage anyone not to grow them, just to monitor the roses that they have and take action if you do see the symptoms develop.
Roses have been planted in our gardens for hundreds of years, and with their elegant, colorful, fragrant flower, it's no wonder that we want them in our garden. But with their increased popularity and being planted so frequently, it's also no wonder that we've been facing diseases. If you've lost a few roses to some diseases, I want to show you some new alternatives that you might be able to use. But before we get started, I want you to think about what it is that you really like about the rose. Is it the color? Is it the fragrance? Or perhaps it's the time of year that they bloom. Shakespeare once said that a rose by any other name would smell just as sweet. And I have to tell Shakespeare that there are a couple other plants by other names that do smell just as sweet. If it's fragrance that you're looking for, the abelia is a great substitution. This is a beautiful arching mounding shrub. Most of them get to be about 3 to 5 feet tall. And they have these small, either white to light pink tubular flowers that will just cover this shrub. Now after the flowers fade, you can see that the sepals are kind of a rosy color and they'll persist on the plant to give you some more interest. It's these flowers though that actually are so fragrant that you'll smell them as you're walking by. Now this is the cultivar that just has green leaves, but there are several cultivars on the market, including a Twist of series. Twist of lime, twist of lemon, twist of orange, and twist of vanilla. And each one of those cultivars offer a different variegation to the foliage. It might be green and white, green and yellow, or green and orange. And if you can't decide which cultivar you want with which variegation, there's also a cultivar called Kaleidoscope that actually has green, yellow, orange, and pink foliage all on the same plant. This is a great plant if you're looking for a fragrant substitute to your rose. If you want something that is a little bit more showy with the flower, you might look at buddleia. Now we have some buddleias right here, and a lot of your buddleias, they come in the ranges of purple, white, pinks, and sometimes a dark pink that looks like a red almost. Now this buddleia will get to be about 5 to 10 feet tall, and a lot of them are taller shrubs. If you're looking for something shorter, there are some cultivars called Tutti Frutti that don't get any taller than 2 to 3 feet tall. We also have another one that's a great one that is actually a really deep sangria color, and that's called Miss Molly. And again, it only gets to be about 3 to 5 feet tall. This is another great plant because it is also a favorite for our pollinators. They love this plant as it is very fragrant and has some nice nectar for them. Now there's another shrub that we have around the corner here that is great for pollinators as well, and that's Salvia greggii. This one here is a hot pink, but they come in many different colors, including white, light yellow, pinks and reds, and even some bicolor red and white ones. This is a great pollinator shrub, like I said. Doesn't get much taller than about 2 feet. And once it is established, it's fairly drought tolerant. So that's another great plus for this plant. If it's color that you're looking for, you cannot go wrong with the hardy hibiscus. Now these do get a little bit taller, anywhere from 2 to 8 feet tall, but look at the size of these flowers. And they come in a range from white to pink to red, and again some bicolors with different swirls and things like that. But the hardy hibiscus are just a great plant. Now related to the hardy hibiscus is the Althea, or Rose of Sharon. And what I like about these plants is the double flower. Again, coming in some of your soft pastel colors and purples, but the double flower really gives you that look of the double rose. Again, these tend to get tall, but there are some newer cultivars that do stay short. One cultivar is Little Kim, and it only gets to be about 3 to 4 feet tall. In Oklahoma, we of course have to talk about our lovely crepe myrtle that continue to give us color throughout the season. And while it has finished for this season, you can see by the abundant number of seed heads that there was plenty of color on this. This is a very compact crepe myrtle, and what I love about crepe myrtles is, like junipers, you can get them from anywhere from 18 inches to 18 feet tall. This cultivar is called Pocomoke, and it actually only gets to be about 3 to 5 feet tall, and it has a nice pink color on it, but you can see how well rounded it is. Now, if you're looking for something to substitute your carpet roses, we have one here. It's another crepe myrtle, and it's aptly named Rosy Carpet. This plant, while it only gets a foot tall, it will actually spread about 3 to 4 feet. So this is a great substitute for those carpet roses. Well, I hope that this has helped. I know it's unfortunate when you lose a plant in your garden, but instead of taking it as discouragement, I hope you look at it as an opportunity to plant something new.
Next week on Oklahoma Gardening, we are planting the stinking rose, also known as garlic. Barbara Brown has a great garlic recipe. We look at a beautiful ornamental grass that is bringing color to the garden. And we plant bulbs for a spring show. So join us then for more TV You'll Grow to Love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We wish to thank our generous underwriters, TLC Garden Centers, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society. We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.